Will Bitcoin hit $70,000 by October 1st is the topic of the day. And then also traditional markets continuing to march to new all-time highs, what I'm trying to say, while also closing a new weekly on new all-time highs, perhaps a little bit of a short-term pullback in bounds here. But ultimately, closing out this month near the highs is going to be considered, I don't know, maybe good for markets in general if you do have an overall positive / bullish view. So let's start off with actual traditional markets for today. This is SPY futures right here, symbol ES1, and what do you know? A weekly close on new all-time highs. Yes, it did close the week out on a slightly down note. We should be aware that there is a nice little daily gapola coming in back from about Friday the 13th. Sorry, not Friday the 13th, but Monday the 16th to Tuesday the 17th, somewhere down around about 5650-ish region. So it could open up next week on a bit of a pullback, but ultimately that should be a nice little bouncy region. What I do want to focus on here is, of course, the weekly, as we are interested in higher term timeframes for this, as the trend continues to remain our friend and closed on new all-time highs is, well, trend continuation by definition. And why is this relevant? Well, we do see a nice correlation between Bitcoin and, of course, traditional markets. We can also measure this mathematically by looking at the correlation coefficient down here. And as you can see, we did see a pretty big deviation between the two as of recent times, basically all of summer, while traditional markets were kind of putting in a more constructive higher low, and Bitcoin was, doing its old downtrend / sideways dance. But as you'll notice in the past, where we have seen this sort of not even decorrelation, but actually negative correlation emerge, it quickly snaps back. In basically all instances to go for a very, very positive correlation. Pretty much anything above spot 5 is pretty positive correlation here. So, in this case, traditional markets making new all-time highs. I don't know, kind of be looking for Bitcoin to perhaps play as a bit of a laggard here. In the maybe not so distant future. Moving on from there, should also be known that for SPY futures, we do still see hidden bullish evidence coming off this last low, and the weekly RSI just breaking back into the bullish control zone for the first time basically since August, and before that May, for this pretty extended run over here. On top of that, weekly Joule continues with its upside curvature for the past 1 to 3 weeks now, closing on this third one, I should say. So that is again going to be another good sign, as all of these for the past, these past few ones have produced some pretty significant moves to the upside. I'll just mark them off right here. Boom, you got this one, you got this one, and you got this one, all making new all-time highs from that first tick. So in this case, again, I'd be looking at this as, I don't know, good, maybe a little bit good. If you are no, actually, I'm not going to mention that because I don't want to. But again, short-term pullback could very easily come down to the daily 21, or maybe even slightly lower, somewhere around 5650. So does basically October open up on a pullback? Could very well be, but that probably is an opportunity. Also, if it does happen for Bitcoin as well. On top of that, weekly stochastic momentum continues to remain positioned to the upside, as it did fulfill the pivot above 15 to 19. And again, we did outline that all of the weekly stochastic momentum closures above the critical zone have been accompanied by new all-time highs, except for a couple times. If we do go throughout the history of this, I've measured this one all the way back to the past about 11 years here, and only once did it not accompany a new all-time high for SPY before playing out a greater pullback, or a decent pullback. But this one, yet again, producing new all-time highs. And as you can see in the past, typically likes to kind of stay within this critical zone for a good amount of time, usually finding its highs somewhere around this more extended zone right here, around like the 95 to even 98 region, where a lot of those highs do come in around. So it's got some space to go. Again, that is a more bullish thing, or it is a more, positive thing for traditional markets, and likely to spill on over to Bitcoin, as we're going to be getting over into that soon enough. I do want to, for Bitcoin, what should we do for Bitcoin? First, let's go over weekly CME. Let me just, I just had it right there, and then I literally passed it up. There we go. All right, let's bring this back up. Yep, we got the weekly closure for CME, and what do you know? Bitcoin closed a nice girthy green dildo back above that nice median right here, now at 61,600. So not bad. Top side of the 38.2 level is coming in at 70,500, basically, give or take a few bucks from that number. We do see the HPDRO, confirming into positive territory, and what do you know, the HPDRV coming off of, extreme lows. Again, HPDRV volatility is direction neutral. The last big explosion that we saw over here was a big downside move, but my main point is that these expansions off the lows do accompany big moves. So in this case, Bitcoin, in my opinion, quite likely to test somewhere around 70,000 bucks. If we go over here and revisit, I believe it was a 12-hour setup. If you've been following this one, let me just bring it up right here. Let me put on our tool. It's pretty damn, no, this is wrong one. Was it this? Yes, it was this one right here. This was the 12-hour time frame setup. Also on the wrong chart. My apologies. There we go. And as you can see, a very, very simple strategy. Here are the results for it for the last, I believe, 6 years, going back to 2018. So kind of omitting a lot of those earlier results where some of the returns were just absolutely fucking crazy, which I think is unfair to expect something like that. But this is a little more modern for Bitcoin. Again, it's a very simple strategy. Basically, Bitcoin closing above the 5 exponential alongside a 12-hour time frame uptrend does initiate the conditions for an entry, and then closing below the 5 exponential initiates the closures for the entry. This one fired off a few times over this past week. Actually, the past couple times were losses. I should add that these were quite minimal losses compared to what the gains typically are for this one. That's kind of why this strategy is allowed to survive despite having a lower than 50% hit rate. Again, another loss right here. The last 3 ones were losses, but when it does win, it typically wins pretty big, or in my opinion, pretty big. So if we go into the performance summary and actually look at the data for this one, the average winning trade returns 7.5% versus the average losing trade, losing an average of like 180 or 182 if you want to be super exact. So again, looking at that in terms, or translating that into terms of price action, as we do have the entry here at just above 65,000 bucks. What would that look like? 7.5% to the upside puts Bitcoin where? Puts Bitcoin literally right just a ball sack hair above 70,000 bucks. So not bad, not bad. And then on top of that, we can come up with an average amount of time, average amount of bars and winning trades. You actually can't see it because my face is blocking the criteria, but it's 10 bars right here. 10 bars on a 12-hour time frame is what? 5 days. 5 days puts us where? Basically October 1st, like literally October 1st. Let me just measure this out to be exact. 10 bars, 5 days, literally October 1st, Tuesday, this coming Tuesday. Again, these are averages. Doesn't mean it's going to play out exactly like that. Could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less, could take a little bit longer, could take a little bit less longer. These sort of things are always, this is always marked up to variance, but this one does look like it's probably going to be a winner. In the case of losers, these typically are in and out like within 1 day. So I'd say because we've already seen this one go on for about 2 days now, well, probably more likely to be a bit of a winner, but still want to survive the weekend, which probably does because we typically don't see, significant price action over the weekend anyways. On top of that, revisiting the weekly closure for CME here, let me just go back to it. Weekly stochastic momentum is going to confirm again to the upside. Again, also confirming hidden bullish divergence between this low here and this low here. Higher lows on the stochastic oscillator, accompanied by lower lows on price action. So that is divergence by the pure definition of it, and volatility rising off the lows as well. So I look at this as likely a bullish signal. Again, if you're in the Krown school, you already know that the 21 exponential above the 55, that is your bullish silver cross, alongside weekly stochastic momentum to the upside and volatility rising off the lows. I mean, that's a setup. It doesn't mean that there can't be pullbacks in the short term. If Bitcoin did want to pull back anywhere around like 62.5 to 63.5 thousand bucks is fair game. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but that's kind of where I'd be looking for if it is going to happen. It is what it is. It is what it is. And you can see right here on the daily, we probably do see momentum turn to the downside relatively soon. Let's see what the pivot was. 66,000 bucks. So it actually did meet that one again on Friday, but it's going to be hard to keep that up there on early next week. So I suspect that October might open up with a bit of a pullback. Is that going to be an opportunity? I would probably argue so. And from there, Bitcoin likely challenges somewhere around 70,000 bucks. I'm sure that the line drawers of the world are going to be looking at something like this, and fair enough. I mean, we do see these. I mean, we should give these things their due diligence. I mean, they sometimes they do hold true. It's just very hard to trade off because it's like, where exactly does this pixel end and begin? Nobody fucking knows. It's a mystery as always. But somewhere around here, what do you know? It's just below $70,000 as well. So, a formation like this that has already tested the highs once, twice, thrice, actually 4 times. The more times that you test something, the more and more likely it is to break. Versus the lows right here. I'm sure people are going to be calling this some sort of a fucked up channel or whatever. I guess this is what kind of fucked that one up, but we'll just ignore that for the line drawer's sake. But in this case, again, looking pretty damn good. Daily is reversed into an uptrend for the first time in a long time. Would like to see, obviously, this high here from July taken out. That would be like that would be like the fully conservative way of looking at this just whole consolidation as resolved to the upside. So I do think that this can still take a little bit more time. Let's say October opens up with a bit of pullback, maybe something like this, boom, and then back up, and then actually, goes for a legitimate try to actually break those highs, thus confirming or perhaps confirming above this high right here. That would be the big one for me. That's like the next biggest number for me. $70,000, just kind of like a round even number. It's a good clickbait number as well, but it doesn't really mean too much in the grand scheme of things. But for right now, we still have things pointed just generally higher. Again, does not mean that you can't get a pullback in the short term, but any pullback that really fails to come back down below about $62,000 is just that, just a pullback before trying again higher. So yeah, I think that's probably going to be a good place for me to be leaving off on this video. Also forgot to mention. Okay, so the monthly is not closing obviously today. It is closing, let me see, officially on Monday evening. For CME and both spot price action, we're going to see 2 very, very potentially important things. And these would just make me blindly bullish, honestly, into October alongside seasonality. Again, doesn't mean that there can't be a pullback somewhere around, let's say, $63,000, give or take $500 from that number. But 1, Bitcoin would reclaim that red 5 exponential moving average. And then 2, the monthly stochastic oscillator would cross back onto the upside because, the pivot right now is 64,500. Thus crossing back up to the upside since March. March to April was the last cross down. And obviously the last official cross the upside that we saw was back in January of 2023. If we want more history on this one, we can see something like this. So again, remaining within the critical zone would be a very strong signal to me, something similar to kind of what we saw back on over here in the 2016, 2017 run. So yeah, probably a good place for me to be leaving off on this video. Again, Bitcoin doing what it needs to do at the end of this month. We are looking at the ending portion of September as likely to be a positive time for Bitcoin, and that's kind of what we're getting here. In fact, Bitcoin nearly at the exact price that we're looking for, about $66,000. So I don't think that there's too much more between now and the end of this month. But once October begins, maybe a short-term pullback. But from there, kind of got the green light, as does, I suppose, the rest of this market, as we do see several things, several shitcoins especially, launch up into crazy rallies. Anyways, I'm just fingering my probiotics over here, which they're getting ready to go through my body. Excited about that. And that's a good place for me to be leaving off on this video. Can't even see how long this video was. It was about 13 minutes, so nice one. I'll be signing off on that note. We'll do some live stream next week as well. And with all of that said, I want to wish you the best of the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully tomorrow.